Okay, right, we've still got a minute to go, but looks like there's plenty of you here already, so I think we'll make a start. So it's really good to see so many of you today. My name's Robb Benne, not Malcolm. If you were expecting to see Malcolm today, you'll have noticed that it's me instead. Okay, I'm talking to you from Copenhagen in Denmark, and I can see we've got lots of people from all over, so that's really fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to join me today. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be looking at how you can help your teenage students with exam skills. I'm one of the authors of Beyond, which is a new 6-level course for teenagers, and I'll be using some examples from the A2+ and B1 levels of Beyond. And that's where we prepare students for exams which correspond to the PET level, the Cambridge PET level. Can I just ask you, how many of you teach the Cambridge exams? How many of you teach CET, PET, first certificate? Yep, a lot of you. Great. Good. And the rest of you, do you teach different international exams, or do you teach exams that are particular to your country that are only taught in your schools? Okay, I can see lots of you are teaching the Cambridge exams. Excellent. Well, what I'm going to say today is relevant to most exams at lower secondary level. So for students age 11 to 16, even though some of the examples that I'm going to look at later are based on PET exams. Okay, so there'll be something for everyone. Right, let's get started then. Now, if you think about your students, do you find that they get worried about taking exams? Do they feel stressed? Do they feel nervous? Does that affect their exam performance? Yeah, I can see a lot of you are saying yes. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very natural to be nervous about exams. I remember when I was taking my Danish exams not so long ago, I was so nervous. So certain bits of nerves is good and it's natural, but I think one of the things that we need to do as teachers is to help students show what they can do in exams. All too often when students are taking exams, they worry about what they can't do rather than what they can do. So I think what we need to do is help students feel that they can do it rather than not. So we need to make sure that students, one, have the skills to feel confident about taking exams, and we also need to help students know what to expect from the particular exams that they're taking. In my experience, and probably in your experience too, the key to exam success is long-term training. So not just short-term preparation before the exams where students cram in everything from the whole year, but training throughout the school year. And what I don't mean by this is constantly testing students and only working towards examinations, but instead making students aware that everything they do in the school year is preparation for their exams. So as you can see in this mind map here, I think that exam skills are a combination of several areas that students work on throughout the year. If we zoom in here to the right-hand side, firstly and obviously there's language, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation skills. that students learn, practice and recycle throughout the year. What's also important though are strategies, sub-skills, whatever you like to call them. Most exams test communication rather than just knowledge of grammar and vocabulary. And so skills such as predicting what a written text is about from pictures, or interpreting somebody's tone of voice in a listening text, using strategies for dealing with unknown words. All those things are really important. And I'm sure that you train your students in these skills throughout the year. And that will help them, obviously, in exams too. What I would like to do today, though, is focus on 2 other areas. And that's the area of life skills and exam tips. So first, the area of life skills. You might know them as 21st century skills, soft skills. In Beyond, we have a life skills lesson in every unit. And in the slide, I've taken some of the topics from the life skills lessons in Beyond A2+ and B1, which I think are particularly useful for exams. So I'm talking about things like learning to be more self-confident, organizing your time, staying on task, learning to deal with stress, and recognizing what you're good at. I've also included here collaborating to organize a group activity, because you'll know that in the speaking part of PET, here's an example. There's a task where students work together. They have to ask each other about their opinions, and then they have to make a decision together. So they have to collaborate together. So in this example, there's a boy who's on holiday in the USA. He wants to buy some presents for his parents, and the students have to say which presents they think are good and why, and then decide together. Okay, so that's an example of how collaboration can be helpful in exams. So coming back to the life skills then that I want to look at now, we're going to look at firstly learning to deal with stress, and then staying on task. So if your students are well prepared for exams, then hopefully they shouldn't be stressed. But if your students have any sort of problems and stress issues throughout the year, perhaps with organizing their time, then of course their exam anxiety is going to be so much worse. So it is a good idea to teach your students long-term strategies to cope with stress. Okay, I can see somebody can't hear very well, so I'll just adjust my microphone a bit. So with life skills, it's often a good idea to start off with a brief case study, like this one here, so that you can raise awareness of the topic. And so there isn't a personal focus on your students right away. So if you look at this one here, what would you suggest to Emma? Okay, so if you've got a student like Emma who's worried, she has panic attacks sometimes. Okay, thank you. Suggesting plan her time properly, take a break. Yeah, she's doing too much. Should learn to prioritize, organize her time. Yep, excellent. Okay, learn to relax, breathing. Good, good one. Right, if you were doing this with your students, then you could give them a list of tips that could help them with stress. Obviously, this will give them some of the language that they need to work with, also give them some ideas if they don't have any ideas, and ask them first what tips would be good for the person in the case study, and then ask them, well, what tips would be good for you? Which tips do you think that you could use if you were having problems with stress? And then perhaps your students also have lots of different problems, lots of different tips that they would like to share with somebody else in the class. So you'll see some of the things that you suggested here: organize your time, try and forget problems, do sports, deep breaths, etc. Now, do you know the Keep Calm posters? They're everywhere at the moment. In Beyond, we have some examples here of how you can keep calm that teenagers have suggested. If you had to do this this task, what would you write in your poster? I see somebody likes the chocolate one. I like that one as well. What would you suggest? Keep calm and think life is beautiful. Eat ice cream. Listen to music. Yep. Go for a walk. Worry less. Go for a walk with your dog. Yeah, that's a good one. I do that too as well. I have a little pug and I go for a walk with him. Excellent. Good. Well, if you do these with students, you can get them to make the posters, then hang them on the wall so that all the class can look at them. You can also do them electronically if your students like working with computers. There's a tool on the internet. It's called Keep Calm-O-Matic. You can Google that if you're interested. And it's a tool where your students can make posters like these, the Keep Calm posters, and they can design the background and put in symbols so they can make their own electronic posters. And then they can save them digitally and send them to you. And then that's something that you could send to the class before exams, for example, in an email or on whatever platform you use for sharing digital media. Okay, so that's dealing with stress. Stay on task. What can you see here? What's distracting this boy in the picture here? You can see he's trying to do his homework. Okay, so family members are distracting him, TV. Yeah, lots of confusion there, his brothers and sisters. Yeah, it's just his siblings. Okay, all sorts of noise, and you notice he's got a phone there that's vibrating, so he's got messages coming in. He's trying to read magazines. Yep, he's hungry, stomach's rumbling, he's tired. You know, there's no way that he can concentrate on his homework. Now, I see that somebody wrote multitasking there. And I think a lot of teenagers think that they can multitask. You know, my kids do this all the time. They're on the TV, they're on their phones, and they say they're doing their homework. The thing is, if we look at research on multitasking, and I'll just give you a moment to read this. You can see that although people think that they can multitask, in effect, they're actually much less effective when they do several things than when they do a single activity. So it means that they're less effective at paying attention, and research has shown that it does have an effect on memory. So things take much longer to do if you're multitasking. Now, this first research that I'm referring to at Stanford University was done with adults, but there's also been a recent study last year with teenagers, because I think we often think that teenagers are better at multitasking because they're more used to it, because they're digital natives, whereas, you know, people of my age are not so good. But it's actually not true. And a study of teenagers found that 85% performed worse when multitasking. So the vast majority are not good at multitasking. They're less effective. But 15%, the study found that 15% of teenagers who use media to multitask over a long period of time do actually perform better when they multitask. So it's a bit of a mixed picture. Most teenagers can't multitask effectively, but a certain percentage can, and it will actually be interesting to see in the future if that changes. If the more that teenagers grow up with media, if they actually become better at multitasking. But at the minute, it looks as if it's better if they focus on a single activity. So what can you do then to help your students? Firstly, you can set a time limit for tasks. So not for every task, but now and again a task in the classroom, a homework task, give them a time limit and ask your students to stick to it, to really try to get something done in that time limit. You can explain to them the benefits of working in a quiet place at home without any media, because obviously that's what they've got to do in the exams. They'll be in a quiet place, they have to focus, they have to stay on task. Breathing exercises, I'm a big fan of breathing exercises. I saw a lesson recently with a teacher who started the lesson by getting her students to stand up and then simply breathe in and breathe out. Okay, and she said that she did this at the beginning of every lesson because it really helped her students to focus on the task that they did afterwards. You can also get your students, if you think they might feel silly just breathing, you can get them to draw a square in the air. So you get them to go up, across, down, and back again while they're breathing. So in, out, out. Okay, get students to do that a few times, and it will really focus their attention. That's also something that they can use at the beginning of exams as well too. So finally, sleep. We all know how important sleep is. A lot of teenagers don't. My daughter certainly doesn't. But the reality is, all the research shows that sleep makes you smart. So that's a good thing to keep reminding your students of. Right. So that was staying on task. If we look now at exam tips, and by this I mean the sort of tips that usually teachers give to their students in order to help them with actually the format of the exams. But again, I think these sort of tips are also much more useful if they're done as training throughout the year. So the sort of thing I'm talking about, oh, I can see somebody said you're enjoying the session, thank you, good. Right, format of the exams. Obviously your students need to know how many exams there are, how many papers, which skills they're using, is it listening, is it reading, etc. But they also need to know the evaluation criteria. So if we think, for example, of PET, the criteria for speaking and writing tasks is based on how well a student can communicate ideas in the task, and not simply on the number of mistakes students make. So that's useful information for people, for students to know. Task types, I think it's really important that students know what sort of task types they're going to meet in the exams. And if you can practice these throughout the year, then students will be able to recognize them and do them automatically without thinking too much about them. So it's a really good idea to train certain types of tasks that you know are going to come up in your exams, such as true, false, multiple choice, matching tasks, etc. So we're going to look at some examples of task types in the PET listening and writing exams. But as I said before, I think these points are also valid for your exams, for any type of exams. They're taken from the progress checks in Beyond A2+ and B1, which appear after every 2 units in our books and include PET-style tasks. But of course, you can do the same sort of training that I'm going to do with you now using past papers from your exams or from the Cambridge exams or whatever exams you use. Okay, so let's look then at a listening exam. This is an example of a listening task that you might be familiar with. It's the one where students hear 5 separate short conversations, and then for each conversation they choose a picture from 3 alternatives. So on the left you can see a couple of questions from the task, and on the right we've got some tips for doing this task. So first of all, obviously you want to get students used to reading the instructions carefully. I mean, that sounds pretty obvious, but I mean, how many times have we had students in exams that simply panic and don't read the instructions? I'm sure you've experienced that. Okay, and if we look at the 2 tips in the box, in the exam tips box at the top, it says, read the questions carefully before you listen and look at the pictures. What English words and numbers do they show? So if you look at the first question, how much is the computer? Okay, you can see 3 prices. Okay, so that's already telling the student that they're going to hear something about computers, prices, maybe some sort of shopping conversation. Okay, so they've already got an idea of about what it's about. The prices, they can see 200, 299, 499. Okay, what about in question 2? Where is Danny? What can you see there? In A, you can see the first place is a bus stop. Okay, and then you've got street, and the last one, pretty obviously, is cinema. Okay, so the students already know keywords that they need to listen for. So the next tip, which you can see in the box, is listen carefully for these words and numbers and for the main ideas. Now, it's good to point out to students that all 3 of these numbers or things will be in the listening text. Okay, they're not just the wrong answers aren't just irrelevant distractors. They will be in the listening text. So students do need to listen for the overall meaning, but at the same time they're also listening for these keywords. Okay, so I'm going to read out the listening text for the first question. I'm afraid I can't play the recording. So the first listening text, it's actually a radio advert. And the announcer says, this week only, this supercomputer with monitor, keyboard and printer usually costs €499, but you can save €200. Yes, €200 and pay only €299. That's right, 299, only at Computerland. Okay, so you heard all 3 numbers there. Which one was the right answer? You can see you are writing it in the box. Yep. So it's 299 was the right answer, B. But you heard the other numbers too. So when your students are doing this, they really need to focus on understanding the gist as well as listening for those keywords. Okay, what about the second one then? The second question. The listening text is a conversation between a girl and a boy on their mobile phone. So the girl starts and she says, "Hi Danny, can you hear me?" And there's lots of traffic noise, and he says, "Can you say that again?" And she says, "I'm in the street, I'm waiting for the bus." And he says, okay, I'm at the cinema. I'm waiting for you. So the answer there would be C, the cinema. Yeah, absolutely. Well done. Okay. So the thing there is the students just have to listen for who's speaking and the place that that person is at. Okay, so the other two places are mentioned, but they were for the girl. Right, good. So the final tip here then is that students need to know when they listen again that they can check their answers. Okay, so do you have 2 listenings in your exams? I think most listening exams do have 2 listenings. So your students need, oh, Carol's saying only 1 listening. Okay, that's a shame. That's a shame, yeah. Okay, if your students are doing PET, then they do have 2 listenings. The first time they can listen and do their answers, and the second time they can check. And that's really important that they know that so that they don't panic. In real life, there is only 1 chance to listen, but it is good to train your students to listen, but in a teaching situation, it's always good to have a second listening. So, Carol, I completely agree with you. It's not real life, but we are in the classroom. Okay, let's look at an example of writing. Again, this is PET, okay? So it's A2 plus, B1 level. I think this one is from A2 plus, so it's early PET level. If you look at the first tip here, read the task carefully. And if you look at the instructions in bold, what sort of information can you get from this instruction in bold? What does it tell you? It tells you, obviously, firstly, the type of writing that you're expected to do. So it's a message. Okay, who are you writing to? You're writing to your new online friend, Angelo. That's right. So it tells you who you're writing to. What's the topic? Topic is free time activities. Yeah, and somebody all right, it tells you the number of words. Okay, so that's quite a lot of information just in that short instruction there. Okay, the next tip is that be sure to include all 3 things in the task. It's quite easy sometimes to overlook the things that are needed to be included, and this is important, obviously, because if you don't include everything, then students will be marked down. Okay, tense. The next tip, use the correct tenses. What tense would you be expecting students to use here? Okay, we're talking about habits, hobbies, so they're using simple present. If it was a task, for example, that said, ask Angelo what he's going to do next week, then obviously your students should be aware they need to use present progressive for future or maybe going to. If it was something like ask Angelo what he did last week, then they would need to use the past simple. Okay, so students need to check which tense they need to use. And finally, use the correct number of words. You can make sure that students get used to counting the number of words by giving them tasks in class with a word count. And at the same time, though, remind them that if they do cut words because they've got too many words, then they should make sure that they still keep all the information that they need to include. Okay, so I can see we're coming to the end of the time. 30 minutes goes really quickly. So I'll give you a quick summary. We looked at the importance of long-term training for exams and how the 4 areas in this mind map are all important throughout the year. We looked at a couple of points of life skills, learn to deal with stress, stay on task, Here I've included learn to be more self-confident because I think that's really important for exams too. But I see that Emma Sue Brents is doing a talk on confidence on Friday. So you might like to participate in that one. Exam tips, we looked at a couple of concrete examples from PET and went through some tips for helping your students to recognize particular task types and how to deal with these task types effectively in exams. Okay, so I'd like to say thank you so much for taking part. It was really great to see so many of you here today. And hopefully, even if you were expecting to see a Malcolm man today, I hope you managed to take something away from this session on exam training and tips for teenage learners. If you have any questions or would like to contact me, then I've put my website address here. You can see it here, rebeccarobbenne.info. You're very welcome to contact me on the website. And if you would like any more information on Beyond or Go Beyond, which is the American English edition of Beyond, then you can find more information on the websites given here. So thank you again for participating so well today, and thanks to you too, Henry, for helping. And I hope you've enjoyed it and you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Brilliant talk. And thanks for joining us from Denmark today. Hope you enjoyed it too. A perfect timing as well. Dead on half an hour. Excellent. Planned to perfection. If anybody has a question for Rebecca, she hopefully will be able to just stick with us for a couple more minutes. So if there's something you'd like to ask her, please write it in the chat box now. If not, then we will let her go and relax. So please write any questions in the chat box as soon as you can. And if we don't get round to answering them, we can always pass them over to her to answer separately. I'm not really
I see that Oksana has got a question. She's asking, are there any sample text for speaking activities in Beyond? In the progress checks, which come after every 2 units in Beyond, we focus on listening, reading, and writing. But throughout the book, there are lots and lots of speaking activities, and some of them are based on exam task types. So there are lots of collaborative pair work activities, for example. They're not part of the progress checks, but there are plenty of them throughout the book.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca.
So, somebody's just one more, Henry? Somebody's asking.
Yeah, go for it.
About the square. Yeah. Sorry.
That's all right.
Perhaps I should elaborate a bit more. Somebody's asking what I said about drawing a square with your fingers. This is something that I learned from my co-author, Robb Benne. And basically, if you get your students to draw a square in the air with their fingers, like this, while they're breathing in and out. So you've got draw up, breathe in, go across, breathe out, go down, breathe in, go across, breathe out. And you can get your students to do that several times so that they focus on their breathing, and it will calm them down if they're in a stressful situation and get them really focused on the task in hand. Or somebody says a figure of 8 is better. Okay, so like this? Okay, good, thank you.
Brilliant, that's a great tip. So let's just see if we have time for one more question before we let Rebecca go. If anybody has a final question they'd like to ask, just write it in the chat box for us. See if something comes in. pronunciation exercises, Rebecca.
Yep. We have in Beyond. There's a what we've done is we've taken a syllabus based on English as a lingua franca and the pronunciation that you need to communicate with native and non-native speakers. Which so we're focusing on things that might impede communication. And in every unit, there's at least one pronunciation exercise. So it might be based on it might be a consonant, it might be a vowel, it might be consonant clusters, but it's usually something that is a problem for communication. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. And I've shared the link to the Beyond website in the chat box for everybody so they can go and have a look now. So Rebecca, would you just like to say bye before I let you go?
Okay, thanks again everybody for taking part and being such good participants. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, the next session if you're going to that, and otherwise just have a lovely day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Rebecca. Take care and well done again. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording, everybody.